And we're live. So, hey, welcome back to another Unbridled Living in Costa Rica podcast. Today, we've got some really good stuff for you because today we're going to be talking about what I consider the most important thing you need to know and understand if you're thinking about living in Costa Rica, and that is understanding the Costa Rican culture. But you know, it's really more than just understanding the culture. Hey, so what if Ticos do this or do that? It's important that you know that, but what's more important is how's that going to affect you and your everyday life if you're living in Costa Rica. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how will the Costa Rican culture affect you, okay? And so we're going to get into that and a lot more, answering all of your questions while we do that. But hey, if this is your first time here, I'm Alan, and this is my co-host Rebecca. We've been living in Costa Rica since November 2013. Okay, we've traveled all over Costa Rica, and we know more about Costa Rica than, well, I would say anybody else, because we've not only traveled all over, but we've lived in 25 different locations. Okay, and so we're in with the culture, understand what's going on. So if you've got questions, well, we have answers. You can always schedule your phone consultation. We're more than glad to answer your questions right now. However, all those questions are probably already answered in any of the videos that we have. But if you want answers now, schedule that phone consultation. We'll be glad to help you. So before we get started, well, what's been happening on the off-grid homestead?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Well, you know, I wasn't supposed to be gone all week.
Right. You were supposed to be gone one day. Ended up being 3 days.
You know, everything takes longer in Costa Rica, but that's part of understanding the culture. We'll be getting more into that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if a part doesn't work or something's broken when you take it out the box and getting ready to install it, there's no just running to Home Depot or Lowe's and exchanging it real quick. Nope.
Doesn't happen, does
no.
it?
So, but why don't you show them what has been going on the off-grid homestead while you were gone?
Well, that's a good idea. Let me show you and give you a little update on, hey, what has been happening on the off-grid homestead, because I know some of you haven't seen it in quite some time. So,
now, I don't know how good you can see, but these are mulberry bushes, okay? I thought they were mulberry trees, but they haven't gotten real big, and I've really pruned them back. Here's another one right here, and you should take a look. I mean, it is just loaded with some of the biggest, most tasteful, really sweet mulberries. I mean, and talk about, wow, do these things ever go good in a bowl of vanilla ice cream? But if you take a look as I back out, you know, there's one over there. It's not nearly as large because it was in shade for a while, and this one's a little bit larger, much bushier. But man, the berries you get off of this, and it produces a lot throughout the year. I can't say the whole time, but a lot. And then take a look at these bananas over here. So, you know, look at these bananas. So there's some trees right here, and there's a cluster. There's 4 banana trees growing out of here, and I planted just 1 banana, and it put on a bunch of offspring. And then here's some miniature bananas right here, and there's probably 4 or 5 there, and there's a brand new banana bunch. And if you take a close look, you can see that some of them are starting to turn yellow in there. So that's going to be my first batch of bananas. Here's some more bananas over here. Little old shoot there. It's got 4 there, and there's a couple there. And this is a different variety. And there's some bananas here. And then on this banana leaf, well, there's some wasps. Might want to stay away from them. Tiny, tiny wasps. But my point in showing you this is that these banana trees, they weren't here more than a year ago. These mulberry trees, they weren't here. They've been here a couple of years ago. This beautiful, beautiful tree right here, it's got several different nicknames, but hummingbirds love it. Grows so fast, and they'll make a hedge. Come right over here. I clipped those mulberries, and all I did was stick them here in the ground. And so there's 3 growing right here, and all I did was clip 2 or 3 branches, stuck them in the ground, and so there they are, and they're growing and they're healthy and looking good. They're not as healthy here. There's a lot of rock in there, but usually the water is usually spouting a lot of water. But my point is, hey, this place was nothing but a jungle. And I mean, I really love my bamboo, and that bamboo just really starting to take off. And you can see there's that first batch of bamboo I planted, and that big tall bamboo is a result of 4 tiny bamboo plants that I planted there about 2 years ago. And then I decided to plant this long batch here last year, and it's really starting to take off this rainy season. Well, by the end of rainy season, it'll probably be as big as all of those. But the off-grid homestead can just really be a beautiful place. And here's some I'm trying to think of the name of them, but these are some flowers that are just growing right off those rocks. What are the name of these flowers? Oh, the name will come to me. But anyway, they're all millions of hundreds of different types, but it's just absolutely beautiful. You can see that I've got some really tall royal palm trees growing right here, and they'll be beautiful. But hey, you know, no matter where you are in Costa Rica, what I'm trying to kind of maybe show you is a little update on what's happening at the off-grid homestead, what's happening on the off-grid homestead, but also to let you know that, you know what, there's berries, there's bananas, and if you have a place, doesn't matter how small, how large, in reality, in just a year, 2, 3 years, you could actually have a food forest on your property.
All right, and as you can see, we've really been busy over here. Hadn't gotten a lot accomplished the last month and a half because I've been working on that water project we've been talking about. But hey, I want to take a moment to say welcome everybody that's here. I see Randy, Muka, Eduardo, and there's other people here that haven't commented. Take a moment to comment. You can really support the channel a whole lot by commenting, hitting that like button, and you know, sharing this video so that the algorithm will push it out to more and more people. So hey, let's get into it today, and let's talk about the actual culture. And instead of just the all-around culture, what I really want to hone in is on family culture. Hey, looks like cheesecake is in the house. And you know one thing, they do have cheesecake, but it ain't like the cheesecake makes. So anyway, we are talking about the culture, and but I want to hone in on family culture. Muka says I need to mow the grass. Hey,
growing so fast.
It's rainy season. It's growing quick, and I had actually just cut a small section of it before I went back out to finish up this job. Actually, I got one more day to finish, and I pushed through, thought I was going to be absolutely done with it, but then the control panel I got out there for whatever reason, something wasn't working right. So anyway, I got to bring it and see about finding out what's wrong with it. But anyway, let's get into the culture. So, you know, when we're looking at the culture, we have, you know, like I said earlier, we've lived in 25 different places. Most of the time we were living right there in some close family environment. So Rebecca, why don't you share some of the places that we've lived at and maybe some key points that we've learned in living right with the Ticos?
You want to take just one at a time? Or?
Yeah, maybe just take one at a time, or, you know, share some key aspects.
Well, I guess I'll go chronologically. That way it'll be easier like that. So when we first came, we went to a place called Los Juntos right outside of San Vito. That's way south Costa Rica.
Real close to the Panamanian border,
yeah,
right?
Probably like 15-minute drive from the Panamanian border. Mountain town. San Vito is like the center, the capital of that little
area, right?
Yeah.
Not an actual capital of the country or anything, but you could say kind of the major
I forgot what
town
they call it. We call them counties, but they call it something else, or we call, I guess it would be like a state. But anyway, we were at Los Juntos, and I think, you know, I was thinking about all this before we came on. The main thing that stands out to me, that first house in Los Juntos, was the caretaker, the Tico caretaker. We discovered this house off of the internet, and we got it from the travel agent.
We got it, well,
the guy that we met.
Well, it wasn't a travel agent. I mean, this house in Los Juntos, because it was the first place, we actually got it off of a rental site.
Right. I forget what you
and
call it.
paid too much because it was on a rental site.
Yeah.
When
A
real
realtor.
estate site.
A realtor.
A real estate site.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Anytime you get something off a real estate site, you're almost always going to pay too much.
Right. So we overpaid, and it was a nice house, but they couldn't get us internet. We did not. We were told that we could get internet. So we rented that house, and then for a whole month waited for internet and never came. But anyway, the Tico caretaker was a fabulous man. He actually watched my little Ginger for me, my little dog for me, a couple of times when we went motorcycle riding. And the owner of the house lived she's still in Spain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what stood out to me at that place was that the Tico caretaker, when we told him we were going to move to another part of the same area, but a little bit higher altitude, he was like, "Oh, it's too cold over there." Yeah. So I found that funny because it was, it's Costa Rica, but it was.
For him, he said it was a little higher, but the point in that whole conversation was that it's understanding and is that, most Ticos don't hardly ever travel more than 5 or 10 kilometers away from their house. They typically, not all Ticos, obviously, right? But majority of the Ticos, they can be a waterfall 2 or 3 kilometers from their house. They wouldn't know anything about it.
Right. A lot of that natural beauty because they don't explore. Yeah. A lot of Ticos take vacations to the beach. But what I was going to say with this caretaker is, he didn't want to go to a different altitude because it would be too cold, and he told us he had never gone to the beach.
Never been there.
He lived in Costa Rica and never been to the beach, which, I was like in my late 20s probably before I went to New Orleans. So being from Louisiana, that's like kind of strange.
Yeah, because a lot of people think,
people travel from all over the world to go to New Orleans, and I lived 4 hours away and never went. So. But anyway, that's what stood out to me at that house. Oh, and the coffee plantation culture that was there.
And keep in mind, that's a whole different culture. So we're going to try to focus on family culture in Costa Rica, because that's a whole nother culture when you're talking about the coffee plantation.
But the plantation, we've had a lot of Ticos that were landowners that had coffee plantations that have asked you when you were kind of doing the real estate thing, if we could sell their farm, because they're kind of getting out of that, the price of coffee. I don't know what it's like now. Well, they weren't
making money. Used to, they made a lot of money with coffee back then. But let's stay on focus here.
Okay, so we weren't really in a family atmosphere at that particular house. After that, we went to Bella Oriente at a house that was right in the center of a family. It's like we had the brother to the left and the mom and the other brother to the right.
I mean, you can hear them snoring or talking next door. That's how close to that family environment we were in.
Yes, and typical of families that, I guess came here and settled and had have a piece of land, they kind of build their houses within, I call it spitting distance from each other, literally. And so that was, the 30-something-year-old son lived with his mom, which is totally acceptable.
Very acceptable in Costa Rica.
In the United States, it's kind of looked down upon, but here it's very normal that you might have 3 generations in one house, and that's lovely, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's how it used to be, at least in my family. I remember my grandmother taking care of her mom and having her children, until they moved and got married. So things were different. And we like to say that, Costa Rica is a little bit behind. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. I hope they don't really change all of that.
I hope they don't ever catch up to where the United States.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that stood out for me at that particular place, and is keep in mind that, these Ticos will build right next to each other, like Rebecca said, spitting distance. But it's kind of like there might be 5 houses right there, one next to each other, but it's like they all share the land, okay? So we were in a Tico place, so guess what? The guy next door had fighting cocks, roosters, and he would get up every day, he'd take his cocks out of their little cage, put them on our clothesline. Yeah. In my backyard.
That's one of the things that we were talking about. So realize that if you move to Costa Rica and you move into or rent, for a while in a family
environment.
neighborhood or whatever, little community, family owned, where they own the land, but you're renting the house. The different places that we live, they tend to treat your yard, not the house, but your yard that you're renting as
public
if
space.
it is, public space. Like they still own it. At that place, it was nothing for.
Yeah, I mean, like at that particular place, it was nothing for them to come in and out and share our clothesline, right?
Yeah.
It was nothing at the other place where we rented at. They came in and they would get the fruit off the trees.
The next house that we went to from there, it was nothing for the owners of the people that we were renting from, the landlords, to pull into the driveway any time
of the day,
and just walk in the yard and pick the fruit off of the trees. That's just different. There's nothing wrong with it. It's different. We're used to, if you rent a property, it includes the yard, and that's your private space, and nobody's just going to come in.
Yeah, no one's just going to come in because you could be picnicking in the backyard or whatever.
Yeah, so that was different.
It's very, very different.
And that we were hoping to pick that fruit ourselves, and so they shared with us. They picked it and gave us some. But same in Potrero Grande, that wasn't even family owned. That was just a neighbor who picked our bananas. And then shared a hand of them with us.
Yeah, and then the other neighbor who come in and picked the lemons off the lemon tree right there. It's
acceptable. It's different, and so we were surprised, because they just pull up that first house. That was a shocker because they just pull up in the driveway and.
Well, stop and think about it. We had talked about this earlier. We were living in Potrero Grande, so we were just a few feet away from the rodeo barn, or what's called the rotunda. It's just a round building. It's a rodeo barn. Well, people would practically park their cars in our yard. So Ticos don't respect your own yard or your property. Hey, it's a great place to park. Let me park right here. And they're not going to ask your permission.
That's not for every occasion. That's mostly like just when it's a rodeo or church fair, or some kind of thing like that for the community. Then, everybody in the community goes to these things. Mm-hmm. So it's just acceptable. I suppose that's kind of how it used to be maybe for Mardi Gras in Lafayette, Louisiana, Mardi Gras in New Orleans. People parked everywhere. Now you can't do that. There's
you stop and think about it. Most Ticos, and it's part of their culture. For gringos or people from North America, you saw that video. I take pride in cutting my grass and landscaping and making things pretty. Well, they're not doing that. They, not all of them, but most people, they will spray poison on their grass so they don't have to cut it. They're not landscaping, okay? They got chickens in the yard eating everything up, okay? And so they don't think twice about parking in your yard, and you might have been spending all this time trying to cut your grass and get it pretty. They don't think twice about parking on it, So it's just something a very different
have
culture.
To understand
and
expect. And so that... you won't be surprised and thinking, and this is in cases of renting a place. We rented at all these places. We did not buy any places. Mm-hmm. And I see what Homestead Ranger is saying, which is something I wanted to touch on.
So Homestead Ranger says, if you buy a property and you want to let Ticos use it to farm, do they somehow get squatters' rights, or can you just informally give them permission to run their livestock, etc., without losing the property? And that's really a good question. So that kind of goes back to
when we lived in Carmona. That was the exact situation. We were house sitting for a couple from Portuguese, and they would spend several months in Portuguese, and so we house sat for them for several months, and they had bought the property from a Tico-owned family farm, and they gave them permission to continue to plant and
they had a lot of oranges, a lot of fruit on that property.
Yeah, it was a lot of land, and in exchange they would do work like yard work, and
they kind of
couple had a pool.
They
would keep up their pool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they would cut their grass, but I would not just have a verbal agreement. And I don't think these people had just a verbal agreement. I think it was a contractual agreement that they had.
It's best. So to answer your question, Homestead Ranger, hey, you can let them use it, but you know what? You definitely want to make sure that you have something in contract that saying that, hey, they're just using the property, they're harvesting this and harvesting that, because when it does come to squatters, it doesn't take but a certain amount of time that a squatter can be living on your property, taking care of it, putting up a fence, planting stuff, and then all of a sudden, if he throws up a shack, he's living on the property. You never want to let anyone live on your property, because it's only a matter of time before he has squatter's rights, and then you probably got to pay the guy to get off your property, and he may not accept payment. So,
and if I remember right, things can happen. I remember there being an issue with the family. The Tico family had permission to use their work truck, the homeowner's work truck. Remember that? The little Jeep thing? They had permission to use it for work. If they had to go to town, if they had to go to town and get dog food for their the homeowner's dogs, or feed or whatever.
And it was abused.
And it was
always gets
yes,
abused.
because we would see them in town with strangers, like people
being a taxi.
Yeah, and they definitely did not have permission from the homeowners, the vehicle owner, to use it in that way, but they were. So and they would also use their gardening tools, like their weed eater and their tools. If they had a situation at their house, they were using using their stuff.
Those are things that you have to very closely monitor, because Ticos don't think twice about bending the agreement, to their benefit.
Yeah.
So
and that was another family community that was close knit. I mean, that's the closest I'd seen houses built. When you say,
it was like
you could barely pass one person between
it
was
the
houses.
Small lot, and we were talking about that earlier. You have to understand that most Ticos are going to build right close to the road, and that's for obvious reasons. I mean, the further away from the road you get, the more it's going to cost to run electricity from the road to your house. The more it's going to cost for a driveway. The more it's going to cost to run the water line. Everything costs more, so they're building right on top of the road. And then, of course, sometimes, they only got that small level spot, and while they would rather be a little bit further away, they're going to have to pay for a dozer to come level a spot. And a lot of them just simply don't have the money to do that.
Because most of the terrain is just mountainous.
It's hilly.
Hills and mountains.
So they're building on the one little flat spot that they got.
And of course, again, reminder, we're talking about the rural areas out in the countryside, the agricultural
where we've lived at most
areas.
of the time, because we've been there with the
culture. We're not talking about in the city. My goodness, the valley, San Jose, the valley, the Central Valley is just houses everywhere. It's
So it is very different. Now, we were talking about how the families are really, really close, and so let me back up, because I have really been with this one family, here a lot, because I built a road and spent a lot of time there, and now I've been working on their water system. And so and here's what I have come to and we've learned and seen in the past. And how's this going to affect you? Okay, so it's really important that families, they're close-knit. It's not uncommon for them to have, 3 families, like Rebecca said, in one house. But it's very, very common, and it's nice to see, because they're very family-oriented. And, like I've been on this job, and look, one day we'll go eat at this guy's house. Okay, the next day, the other day we were eating at the grandparents' house. Okay, and so it's not uncommon for them to all go eat at each other's house. And it's kind of like in the United States, when people want to do stuff together, they go to a restaurant and eat. Well, these people are not going to a restaurant and eat. Most Ticos don't have a whole lot of money, so they're opening up their house. They're all cooking, rice and beans with a little meat, a little this, and everybody's going to the sister's house to eat today. Tomorrow we're going to grandma's house to eat there. We're going to eat at this brother's house here. We're eating at this son's house here. And it's almost the same thing in every place. Look, most of the time, if you're going to employ Ticos, and this is where you need to understand the difference in the Costa Rican culture. A lot of Ticos will start work at 6 o'clock in the morning, especially in the rainy season, okay? So, but they're going to start early and they want to quit early. So they're going to start at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Maybe even earlier than
Maybe
that.
even earlier, but most of the time it's about 6 o'clock. Well, guess what? 8 o'clock, it's time for breakfast, okay? So they're going to stop and eat breakfast, and you're going to pay for it if you don't know any better, okay? Now, look, if it's just manual labor and you're only paying this guy 1,500 colones, 2,000 colones, it's normal that you do pay for the breaks and you pay for lunch and stuff. But, when I'm paying a tractor operator $50 an hour, no, I'm not paying for his breaks and I'm not paying for his lunch, okay? But it's common that that almost they're going to start at 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock we're going to have breakfast. Well, after breakfast, we're also going to have a little bit of coffee, but then we're going to go to work, and then we're going to probably have a coffee break around 10 or 11 o'clock, and that coffee break, which is supposed to be 15 minutes, might be 30 minutes, could be longer, because we're going to have coffee, but we're going to go get coffee, and the coffee ain't made, so we're going to sit down, take our shoes off, wait for the coffee to get made. Coffee's going to get made. We're going to have a piece of bread or something, a little snack, and we're going to talk. So that coffee break's going to end up being 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Finally, we're going to go back to work. Come around lunchtime, we're going to have lunch.
Which is really, I can just imagine. I wasn't with you at the job site, but I can only imagine, because you were like, let's get it. Let's finish this. We can break later. I mean, I've seen you work here all day without really taking a break, maybe a sandwich in your hand, literally. I've seen that. So it's very different in that they are not, and this is good. I love this.
No, it is a good thing.
It's not work driven.
I'm not complaining at all.
Do what you do. You need to not work like that and deprive your body of food. But I understand what you're saying, because it is so.
It's so ingrained in the culture that they're never in a hurry. So let's give you an example. Okay, so I was saying, then we're going to have lunch. At 2 o'clock, we're going to have another break, okay? And so I'm looking at the weather. It's about to rain. I'm like, we need to push through and get done. Ain't happening. See, so
I'm very proud of you for being patient, because you never did tell them that, from what I understand.
No, I never did tell them. Yeah, but in my mind, I'm having all these conversations too. I can't have another coffee break. I can't eat this much. But so yeah. It takes time to get everything done. And look, I know this job took me 2 weeks longer than normal, but keep in mind, I was upgrading their water system. They were providing the labor. So they were helping. And look, I'm very easygoing. I weren't paying these people, but so I'm a part of the culture. I'm right there with them, and so we're having breaks. Everything is taking longer, but you know what? It's important that you understand this, because even when I'm paying my laborers, okay, then hey, they're still wanting to have breakfast. It's like, dude, eat breakfast before you get here. But that's not Costa Rica, okay? They're wanting to have their coffee break. And, so it's important. If you hire people, you need to know this, okay? And then you have to have this understanding, because it's like the tractor operator. Well, I only took a 30-minute lunch. No, you didn't, because I was right there with you, okay? You took an hour lunch. And I don't care how long you take your lunch. Take as long as you want. But I'm not going to pay you $50 an hour for your lunch. So those are the things that you need to know, when you hire somebody. You're going to have that tractor operator. You need to say, okay, there's going to be a transport fee, okay? What are you going to charge me to transport that tractor here? Okay, well, how many breaks are you going to take? You're going to take a break? Take as many breaks as you want, but I want to know, will you take a break? How long is your break? Because I'm not going to pay you $50 an hour to take a 15-minute break. I'm not going to pay you $50 an hour to take an hour lunch. Those are things you need to know. Look, like I said earlier, if you just that cheap stuff, okay, that he's getting $3 an hour, $5 an hour, it's typical that the breaks and the lunch come with it, okay, and that's why in Costa Rica, it's important to understand that most people work 6 days a week. 6 days a week, and their only day off is on Sunday, okay? So that's for most people. So
I was laughing at what Cheesecake said. Is Alan easygoing?
Well, tell him. Is Alan easygoing?
It depends on the situation. So he is able to control his compulsive urges to push through for the sake of, but if you had hired these people and, were paying them by the day, let's say, instead of by the hour, maybe you would have been like, look, we got to cut some of these breaks, because every day over that you stayed, that was another night stay at the hotel, another meals. Yeah, and being that you have to go back, it's really, the gas and everything.
Everything takes a whole lot longer, and it's kind of like what Randy was saying. Randy was saying, after hearing all this, I might not build my dream house. Of course, he's just joking, but he brings up a very good point that says, in business, built-in cost is an important detail. So, it's like, matter of fact, there's a guy building a house, and of course, he speaks good English. He's been in the United States for 12 years, and so he knows about getting it. But, whenever you get ready to build a house, normally they're bidding on that project. So when they're building on a project, I'm glad that you brought this up, Randy. The guy's building your house. If the guy says that it's going to cost you, let's say, $75,000 to build your house, and you say, okay, how much time? Oh, he's going to always tell you 3 months, 4 months. But the point is, it doesn't matter if it takes a year. You to let him know, okay, look, $75,000 is what I'm going to pay you. And guess what? I'm not going to pay you a penny more, okay? So if your workers take that break every day, that lunch every day, and it takes longer and longer and longer, the only problem that you need to know is if it's taking longer and you're renting a house in Costa Rica, okay, while waiting for them to build your house, and he said it's going to be 3 or 4 months and it takes a year, well, then it's actually more cost for you because now you're paying rent, right? And it's important to be on the job site or paying somebody like myself to be on the job site to keep the job going. Because if you're not paying someone to keep the job going, then all of a sudden it's costing you more money in one way or the other, unless you happen to be staying at home or you already have a home. So it's important to understand the culture, because it is going to affect you when it comes time to hiring people, when it comes time to doing things with people. I mean, look, even if you're socializing, understand the culture, because if the Ticos invite you to come to their house, they're inviting you to come to their house, and guess what? You're going to have coffee. You're going to have some bread. You're going to have a snack. I just can't eat that much. I mean, we were taking a break every time you turn around. Every time you turn around, they were trying to feed me. And I appreciate that. I really do. I just can't eat that much, because I'm always going. And, so it's kind of like what Muka says here. It's always best to pay them by the job. Yeah. So if you're going to have what I call a one-off employee. Hey, look, I need you to put up a fence. What are you going to charge me to put up the fence? And he quotes you $500. Okay, that's what I'm going to pay you, and then you just need to supervise to make sure the job gets done right, okay?
And don't be naive and too trusting. We did that in the past and got burnt. Get stuff in writing. Make sure you're clear. Don't make assumptions, because don't just assume that it's going to, they're going to do things the way that you're used to things being done, because it just doesn't happen.
Very, very different. So, we picked up a few tips, because we talked about Potrero Grande. We were over at Carmona. We went over to the Lemoyne side, but that wasn't a family environment.
No, that wasn't family.
That was very, very different. The culture on the Caribbean side is nothing at all like the Pacific side, so we're not even going to go there, okay?
And even though we like our space, I found when we lived in Coweta, it was very lonely. Because we had all that area, we were house sitting there, and there were no neighbors.
There were no neighbors at all.
Not even close like how we have here, and it was very lonely. I didn't care for it that much.
It was a very different environment. But let's see. So
wait, we talked about Morzon. That was not a family. Community.
No, it wasn't. So we moved into San Isidro, which was the Morzon area. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it wasn't a family community. It was more houses all up and down the road. It's really kind of a decent place to live at.
It's like a subdivision.
Yeah, but the culture there, it's very, which was important, because in Costa Rica, almost every family has a little bitty dog, and it's really just a cheap alarm system. But we lived at that one house, and every morning at 5 o'clock, the guy across the street would leave. His dogs would go into anxiety attacks, and he had 4 or 5 dogs, and they would all bark for the next 2 hours. So 5 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock, while I'm still trying to sleep, they're just, so it's important to understand that part of the culture of Costa Rica, it's a dog culture.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a dog, and it's sad, but not everybody is taking their dog. Most people don't take their dogs to the vet, and they've got sores on them. They look terrible, and a lot of them are on 3-foot chains. So it's part of the culture.
Yeah.
It's something you have to accept.
It's not all, because
not all.
Nikki's vet has a thriving business. I mean, if I call for an appointment, it's not right away unless it's an emergency, and there is a groomer. So, but this is a city. San Isidro is a city, so it's different out in the country. But so there are, veterinarians and groomers and stuff in the city. And in Morazan, another thing, the houses were not close together like
Yeah, you had distance because it wasn't a family environment,
Right. And there was something we had no idea before we rented the place, was that our driveway was the turnaround for the taxis that would come.
Yeah, because there was
to that area.
Taxi center, or the official taxi office was inside the house next door to us. He had a tower there. He called all the taxis to send them here and send them there, but they would always come up for whatever reason, and they would turn around in our driveway.
Which would cause all the dogs around to just go crazy, and those taxis were turning our driveway throughout. So anyway, rent. That's the best advice I can give you. Rent. Don't sign any kind of lease. Leases were not common,
and still today leases are not.
They're not as common, but they're more.
But
here's
what's
going
important for you to understand. If you do sign a lease, Costa Rica has a law where, hey, if you can't afford it, you just tell them that, hey, look, I'm moving out next month, and you lose your deposit. So a lot of people who don't know any better sign this year's lease, and they think they have to stay the whole year, and they can't even afford it. So it's important that you understand that, and so it is important to lease. You do not have to sign a contract. Most places don't have a contract. We've moved all over, and I think signed 2 contracts the whole time.
Now, on the positive end, every time that we have lived in a family community, I have felt so safe, and we wouldn't really even worry about our house. We'd leave the house unlocked, unprotected, not
you
say
could.
unprotected.
I mean, we never left it unlocked, but you could. But let's talk about the house in
But that's
Sabalito.
when we go for walks, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But in the city, when we went for our walks,
you better lock everything up.
well, the subdivision, we'd lock everything because we got robbed there before. But anyway, if you're wanting some to experience the culture, and you don't like being alone, getting into finding a house that in a family community is really, really good. I mean, these people would take us in, just be so friendly with us, bringing us gifts of food, and spending time, inviting us over, and things like that.
Well, keep in mind though, but when you're in that family environment, they all are taking their coffee breaks, and they're all having coffee together, they're eating together, but they all like their music together. So it's not uncommon.
Because I was going to say that's the positive, but the negative is that you're in a family community. So
if they're having parties, you might get invited. Look, we get invited over all the time where we're at. And we don't have, the closest community here is over a mile away, but we get invited to all of the parties, all of the birthday parties. We only have one actual close neighbor, but hey, everything that we're talking about today is very much the same here. It's very, very different, and it is like what Steve said right here. Steve said, he says, I found from my experience spending time in Costa Rica that Ticos take care of their elderly. They seem to appreciate their senior citizens, and absolutely they do. This family environment where I'm working at, they all take care of mom and daddy who started that coffee farm over there. All of the family, they go there to mom and daddy's house when they're invited to eat. They're all taking care of family. They make sure mom and daddy has everything. And look, a whole lot of Ticos in these rural areas don't have cars. And so in this situation, family pulls their money together. buys one car, and then it becomes the taxi for the whole family, and the whole family goes out. So they're all sharing that one car.
Yeah. And as I was so impressed by this when we first got here. Be sitting in the bank, playing musical chairs. We've talked about that before. And an elderly person walk in, and they move out of the way and let that person go right up to
Let
the
the
counter.
elderly go up.
Yeah, and let them
or
take
the
care
pregnant
of.
woman go up.
Yeah,
or, the
or a
sick-
handicapped, disabled person. Yeah, and so I really like that about the culture. But something really to consider when you're going to rent is, and you may not know it till after you've already rented, but if you don't like loud music,
You're gonna
and
have
you're
a hard time.
in a community, whether
where
it's
someone's
family or
playing it.
even just a neighborhood where it's no relation, it's just people. Costa Ricans love their music,
And
and
they
they
like
like
it
it
loud.
Yeah, and there's not, in the U.S., if you're in a neighborhood and somebody's playing their music too loud, or they're going on past maybe 10 o'clock at night or whatever the rules are, you can call and report that. Well,
Yeah.
that's not something against the
That's
rules
bad
here.
karma here.
That's just
Yeah.
what,
Now, take a look at what Eduardo says. Not quite sure what he's saying here. He's saying you're not saying that everything is manana, and I don't know what that other word is. But, the point here in Costa Rica, everything does take longer. And that's because they're never, ever, ever in a hurry, except when they get behind the wheel of a car, okay? And then they're flying like it's an Indy 500, okay? But they're never in a hurry. So, it's like I'm looking at it and it's about to rain. I'm wanting to get things done. It doesn't matter. Every day is the same day, and we're going to have breakfast. We're going to have coffee breaks.
gonna
We're going to have
stop
lunch.
and
We're going to have
smell
coffee
the
breaks.
roses.
That's right. They are
that's
going
why they're
to.
the happiest people.
That's the secret to why they are the happiest people.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're
look,
not
I'm
stressed
always,
out.
Yeah, I'm always happy. I'm content. I'm hardly ever stressed. But for me, I get on a project. I know that time is money. I'm push. I'm getting done with that project, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. Costa Ricans are going to enjoy every single day. It doesn't matter how long it takes for the project. Everything, they don't care. We
Yeah,
finish
that's
tomorrow.
that's not
the next
important.
day, next year. They are going to take their time. They're going to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And Eduardo brought up something else here. He says, if there's a big soccer game, forget coming to work.
Oh my gosh, this is so funny, Eduardo. We went to a restaurant in Jaco, and the soccer game was on. Okay, so we sit down. Nobody brings us menus because they're watching the soccer game. The employees.
The employees, forget it. We're not serving anymore.
Yeah, and so finally, I guess maybe somebody called a timeout or whatever you do in soccer. They brought us the menus. It took forever. You remember that, right? It was hilarious, but that was typical of.
If you go to a restaurant and a soccer game is on, it's on all of the TVs, and everything's going to take forever. So if a soccer game is on, I almost don't go because, I just don't like sports. And when we go eat, we like the experience. It's quiet. We want to enjoy our meal.
God bless them, though.
Look, they love it.
You've never seen so many people so
They will band
excited
together
and behind their team. Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah,
The entire country gets behind their
so
team.
I'm not complaining at all, but the whole point on this video is to help you to understand the difference in culture. And if you got a personality like mine, it is way, way, way more difficult. Okay,
And if
I can adapt, there's no reason why
That's
you
right.
can't
If
adapt.
you can adapt.
Take a look what Jeremy says. That lifestyle is so much better. Absolutely. I've always worked way too hard. I've made a lot of money because I'm a hard worker. But still, I remember years back owning my grocery store, made over $1 million every year in my grocery store. But then looking back on it, I was like, I made all that money, but I didn't have time to spend it. I didn't have time to enjoy it. So you're right, Jeremy. Sitting here and just kind of relaxing, and it's kind of what you said. That's the secret to why Costa Rica has been called some of the happiest people in the world, because they do take time to stop and smell the flowers.
I think everybody should be like that.
Everybody
I think
should
the
take
U.S.
time to smell the flowers.
has it backwards. It's just, and everybody's miserable because everybody has all this stress and pressure and got to buy this and have that. They're happy. I mean, we're okay here driving this old car. We don't stick out like a sore thumb like we would in the U.S.
In the U.S.,
here,
like, look at those poor guys.
yeah, I mean, our car is worse off than a lot of the people that have cars. But, you know, and I guess the ease of things is to be envied, I suppose. How much happier could people be? And look, Steve Cheesecake knows how you are, like, because he attended the
Cheesecake knows how hard I am
that you were at.
Right.
But that time was of the essence. Can you imagine?
Oh yeah, there's no way I could throw a relocation retreat.
Yeah, I mean, everything had a schedule.
Yeah.
You had to get on. You know,
you've got to get things done. You know, you can't have a relocation retreat and do it on Tico time. You'd never get done.
No.
It would be a 3-week relocation retreat.
Okay, like going to Manuel Antonio. Okay, we had to be there at a certain time.
We had to leave at a certain time to get back for lunch or supper.
Yeah.
And, you know, Muka Marine is right. You know, we're Marines, okay? And it's going to take some time to slow down because when you're a Marine, you know, you're taught to get it and get it now. When someone says duck, you don't say how come. You're like, you know, you get down.
Yeah.
In Costa Rica, that dude's got his head shot off because duck what? We haven't ducked for supper? It's time to duck for break? It's break time?
Yeah.
It's a very relaxed, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's actually a whole lot better. So when you're coming from, you're going to need to, how is the Costa Rican culture going to affect you? Well, when you come here, you definitely are not going to change the culture. It's been that way forever, so don't even try.
Right. If you go to a restaurant like we did and they're watching the soccer game, it will do you no good for you to be mad and complain like a spoiled, you know, American. It's their culture. Just let it be. Go with it. You know, don't be like that. So, you know, you tell me about in the Marines how y'all had to eat so fast.
Oh, we were getting it.
And you still do that. I have to tell you all the time, slow down, enjoy your meal, make it an event. That's what I do. So
of course, Rebecca's been Tika ever since she was born and didn't know it. You know, it takes her an hour to eat a salad. You know, but
but you're supposed to relax.
Well, you know, I
mean, you eat your food and you don't even know what you ate.
What was that I ate? It was pretty good. Jeremy, what's wrong with a 3-week vacation retreat? I agree with you, but I don't know how many people want to come for that long. It would cost a fortune, but it would be fun. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, but these are all things that we're sharing because it was unexpected. We didn't study the culture before we came.
Well, we didn't do any research, which meant we made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And we obviously, not only did we make a lot of mistakes, it took a lot longer for us to adapt. But, you know, the most important thing that you can do to ensure your successful transition into Costa Rica, because I can tell you right now, I see a lot of videos and people that, this is why I left Costa Rica. I left Costa Rica. I left Costa Rica. Well, you left Costa Rica because you did not understand the culture. Because I can guarantee you, almost every reason you left Costa Rica has to do with the culture. And if you understood the culture and then you were able to adapt, then guess what? You'd be able to have a successful transition to Costa Rica. It makes a huge, huge difference. And Marines, well, I think not just Marines, every service personnel, whenever you get ready to go somewhere else to another country, well, the service always says you've got to take a cultural class, because it's important to understand the culture. You know, and it's the same thing when you come to Costa Rica. It's important that you understand the culture. You know, Eduardo shares an experience, and he says one time going to San Jose, the bus driver actually stopped to let everyone hear the final seconds of the game. And I can understand that. He probably stopped so he can make sure he didn't miss the final few seconds of the game.
Yeah, you're right. I can totally see that.
You know, Costa Rica is just, they'll really get into all of that stuff. So anyway.
I really like a lot of these things, though. The United States could do better going back to having these kinds of values and
much more.
You know, because a lot of people are miserable in the U.S. because of the culture, the modern culture.
Yeah. Now, hey, Homestead Ranger asked a really good question. Question came in. He says, are Costa Rican families tighter in rural areas? I really couldn't honestly answer that question because I intentionally do not live in the city or anything like that. Okay, so, I really don't know how Tico families are in the city. We have always been around the rural areas where hey, the majority of these people, they don't have a whole lot of money. They don't have interior walls. They have outside walls, and they don't have interior walls. A lot of them don't have toilet seats. The electricity, they may not even have breaker panels. It's just very, very different, okay? But they're very, very happy. They're very, very tight knit. And so how are Ticos in the city? I really couldn't answer that question.
I don't know. Our experience with like San Jose has been mostly just Airbnbs, staying overnight or maybe a couple of days because we had to do shopping or go to the doctor or something like that. And people are friendly, but it's a lot more business, I guess, more professional.
You think the people are a little more professional over in the city areas?
Well, is it because I guess it's very business oriented, like in the
you're gonna
like the stores and the offices, and
well, here's one
they
thing
have high rises.
We can share what real Costa Rican culture is. So many people, and this is what we're going to be talking about next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about the difference of living in Costa Rica and visiting Costa Rica. There are so many YouTube channels out there trying to tell you about Costa Rican culture or tell you about Costa Rican experience, but the only thing they've done was they've traveled here, or these are people that move here and then they still live in a tourist area. You cannot tell people about the Costa Rican culture if all you've done was lived in a tourist area your entire life.
Yeah.
Okay?
Now, I have heard a lot of Ticos our age and younger saying that the younger generation is changing.
Look, the younger generation all over is changing. We talk about that a lot, on this job I'm doing. All of the older people, they're working hard, and I'm right beside them. We're all tearing it up. The kids, they're not working so hard. They don't want to work that hard. And so, but that's every place, all over the world, and the younger generations are
holidays are not the same. We're hearing them say that holidays, the emphasis on like the old culture ways of celebrating things is not being carried forward with the new generation. So, who knows how things will be later. And of course, there's something to consider. And you can find all this information by doing research.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure. Muka says, I prefer rural areas, but when single, if you want to mingle, you must be in the city. I don't agree.
Be careful, though.
Because what you can do is, let's say that you want to mingle and you want to be in either San Isidro or either Jaco. Guess what? You can still live in the rural areas, be 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away from the city where you can still go mingle, okay? So, hey, if you prefer the rural areas, I don't care. Even if you're in San Jose, you can be 30 minutes away from San Jose and be in a rural area where you really can enjoy the actual Costa Rican culture more than being in a city, okay? Yeah. Now, I'm kind of a little upset because this ain't right at all, Jeremy. Ain't right at all. Jeremy says in rural Wisconsin, it ain't too bad if you can hack the winter, but he's going to Louisiana along the coast for vacation, so he's going to enjoy some boudin for me.
All right.
That's wrong, wrong, wrong. I mean, that's all wrong. You got to bring some boudin back. Yeah. Don't just enjoy it for me. Have some boudin, some crawfish, some tacos, some gumbo, some crawfish pie. Me oh my. Yeah. Bring some of that food back.
Ooh, we miss our food, huh?
Yeah, and that's, in Costa Rica doesn't have flavorful food like, and that's just part of the culture. It's part of the culture. Their food is different. Jeremy says culture is everywhere. Subcultures are also a thing as well, and make up so many different groups. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's absolutely right. The subcultures, especially over in the rural areas, it is very, very different. So, but while it is different, it's very similar, but it's important to understand that you do have subcultures in Costa Rica, okay?
Well, and like we've talked about, the culture in the city is so different from the rural.
Well, hey,
areas.
look right here. Eduardo brought up, he says, good school today, good video. The old man that comes to fix my yard is 90 years old, makes me look bad. And, hey, the first 2 days of this week, I told y'all last week or something, how it was raining cats and dogs. Costa Rica says it's raining frogs and toads. Makes more sense than cats and dogs. But anyway, it rained so much that we had landslides. Well, look, of course, I'm always out there helping when I can, and we're moving this dirt by hand. Well, my neighbor's father is almost 80 years old, and every time we're doing a landslide, he's almost always out there with his shovel, and he's working right alongside of us. And every day he's out milking his cows. Mm-hmm. That's a part of the culture. Hey, look, if you like fresh squeezed milk, you can get some of the best fresh squeezed milk. It's part of the culture.
For now.
Yeah.
Because they constantly trying to change stuff.
So, it just understand the culture, accept the culture. Don't try to change the culture. But if you understand the culture, it's going to make life in Costa Rica so much better. And I think it's amazing to me how many 80-year-old people, 90-year-old people in the United States can actually get out of their wheelchair, out of their walker to go move tons of dirt on the side of the road.
Yeah, well, we see that all the time. I think that's part of why there's a blue zone here, is because of their
they're still working.
They're still working, but they're not stressed working, but they're still working their bodies. We see older people all the time. They're walking, they're carrying machetes, they're clearing land by hand, just doing a lot of stuff stress-free.
Yeah.
So.
I like when I first came here, it was like they were the ones. Nike stole the logo from them. Nike has a logo, just do it. Well, I'm telling you, Costa Rica they just do it. When it comes time to put in a septic tank, they're not hiring a tractor. They're just going to dig that hole with the shovels they've got. They just do it. Whatever, if they got, it's time to cut grass, and the only thing they got is a multi-purpose machete. That's multi-purpose. Man, they cutting that grass. Everybody's got a machete. That's the most common tool in Costa Rica. So it's a very different culture. Now, it may take them a week to get it done, but you know what? Who cares? Because I'm still going to have my coffee break. Still going to have lunch. We're still going to enjoy, we're going to enjoy life while we're doing it. So, it's like what Muka is saying here. I think it's because of the Imperial is the secret to the blue zone. I agree with you. So I'm going to drink my secret right now. Because I'm going to live a long time. So, hey, if you got any last minute questions, we're almost at the top of the hour. And as always, we really love taking time to share with you. Really enjoy you coming and supporting us, commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing.
There's a comment about the expensive clothing. The clothes are so much more expensive here than the U.S. or Panama. We go to Panama sometimes.
Yeah.
Just to get more quality clothes at a more reasonable price. Because the clothes here are expensive.
And now here's what you got to understand.
They're imported.
Here's something about the culture of Costa Rica. In the United States, we've got a walk-in closet full of clothes that we might wear one time or don't hardly wear. In Costa Rica, okay, I watched this Costa Rican family today. One guy, he sold his house, okay, and so he moved into the other house. His son was living in. His son moved down to an empty house, and he moved his whole house without a vehicle in less than a week. Why is that? Because most of these Tico families in a rural environment, you want to know what furniture they got? Well, number one, they may or may not have a refrigerator. Most of them do have a refrigerator, okay? In this area where we're at, no one has a refrigerator because there's no electricity up here. And so the people that do have electricity with a Pelton,
it's not strong
enough for because their Peltons are not installed, or their hydro electricity is not installed with batteries or anything. So no one around here has an electricity or has a refrigerator. So the Tico family down the road from us, they borrow our refrigerator. Anyway, another story. But he moved his whole house, and most of them, they're going to have two main pieces of equipment. They're going to have the refrigerator and they're going to have their washing machine, okay? They all are going to have a stereo so they can play their music, and then they might have a bed set, but maybe they don't have a bed frame, but they have a mattress, okay? So they don't have a whole lot of stuff to move, and, you know, they're going to move, and so most of them, if they have clothes, they can put all their clothes in one suitcase, and that's what they're living in.
Well, to tell you, most houses, the rural houses that we're talking about that we've rented or have been in visiting people, don't even have closets.
None of them have
That's not
closets.
typical to have a closet. They have a piece of furniture like a wardrobe, or if they might buy those little metal racks and install that. But I would say nobody around here, none of the houses that we've been in has like a walk-in closet. That's just not a thing. Maybe in the city. I have seen closets in the Airbnbs in the city that we stayed in, and I know they have these big condos and stuff that I'm sure come with all of that. But
yeah, you go in the city and it may be no different than anywhere else. But in most places, there's not going to be a closet. If you got enough clothes for a closet, then you probably live in San Jose.
yeah,
and
you're not poor.
No, you're not poor. Most people got enough clothes, like I said, you can put it all in one suitcase. Okay, and that's what they're wearing, and everybody's going to have at least one really nice outfit, so that when they go to the park, they can put on their nice outfit and go to the park.
I mean, that's how we're living right now. We fit all of our stuff into a little set of drawers. But something that you mentioned that kind of coincides with one of the questions asked. I don't know where it went. If we feel secluded, oh look, Jeremy right there. If we feel secluded being out in the rural area, if we didn't have the neighbors they're not that close, but what Alan mentioned is they share our refrigerator. They use our refrigerator. So I get to see them and have conversation and practice my Spanish, and they practice
and of course,
English.
that little girl comes down here and I help them with their English.
Yeah, so we have, they come by quite often, a few times a week. So not totally secluded. In fact, I ran out of something and just texted him. and my neighbor came in the night with a flashlight and brought me what
she wanted.
What I needed.
That was popcorn. She loved popcorn.
I didn't want to say, but
she can't live without her popcorn.
He wasn't here, and
he's like,
I like my popcorn.
Popcorn. It ain't like she was. Can you bring me a cup of sugar? No. Can you bring some popcorn?
So they eat popcorn too, so he had an extra bag.
Here's the thing, Jeremy. Even though we're very secluded, if you have internet, and now with Starlink, you can have internet anywhere in the world, okay, practically, if it's available. You can do lives like this. You can live stream. You can do video chats. And so if you've got a close family, you can still video with them. But it all depends on how much actual one-on-one contact you like. I'm a people person, always have been. And so I do enjoy being around people. I'm not around near as many people, but I guess that's probably why we love doing these lives. Because when I'm doing these lives, well, hey, I'm around 25 people right now on the call, and I get to chat with all of these people, and y'all are chatting back and forth, and I love that. I love getting a chance. We always have a lot of people on the call, and a lot of people don't ever chat. We greatly appreciate those that do chat, and we greatly appreciate you having time, spending time with us, okay?
Yeah, and I'm kind of a recluse by nature. I do not like to be by myself for long. A couple of days is probably the most that I'm okay with, but I don't need a lot of people. Just having one person around is good for me.
I like people, but hey, I'm content being by myself. I go to the job site, go do what I got to do. In about 2 days, Rebecca's like, I wish he was here. I wish he was here. So anyway, and it won't be long. I'm going to be back on the homestead here. And so it won't be long. You're going to actually be seeing some content about what we're actually doing here, updating you on, you'll actually get to see some videos. And so, it's kind of like the video that we showed you today. I'm going to actually show you some little video clips each time, if I remember, to kind of give you an update on what's happening on the off-grid homestead, just so that you can see what's going on, kind of see, what's actually, some of it is just little stuff, hey, got to fix this, got to fix that. But, it's, when you're living on a farm, it's like my neighbor said, we got this problem, got that problem, we got to clear the road. That's normal. That's normal when you live on a farm. When you live on a farm, there's always something to do. But that's the reason we live here. I love being on the off-grid homestead. I love creating my own water, my own electricity, my own internet, creating all this stuff. I love it. And it gives me a chance to, I'm always busy, but it gives me a chance to slow down from what I used to do.
Yeah, and it's not for everybody.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. But if it's something you're thinking about, this is probably a great place to learn about it. All right. Hey, we're already at 5 minutes over our hour, so hey, we're going to let you rock and roll. Thank you so very much for joining us today on the Unbridled Living in Costa Rica podcast, where, hey, we give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about Costa Rica. We'll see you next week.
Ciao.